Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Counseling with Insight webinar. First of all, thank you for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. We know your time is incredibly valuable, so if a student stops by and you have to drop, don't worry, I'll be sending out the recording to everyone who registered this afternoon. So today we're going to be talking about how data can enhance your practice and allow you to gain deeper insight into your student communities. We have such a wonderful range of people joining us from all over the country, from school districts, from private schools, from charter schools, and it's great to see all this excitement around the topic. So, we're all here for the same reason. How can we help students thrive? So today we'll be hearing from 3 experienced practitioners who will be sharing how they use data to understand and support the mental health of the students in their communities. So we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So feel free to throw questions in the chat throughout. Awesome. Well, I'd love to start by having our panelists introduce themselves. So I'll hand it over to you all.
I can hop on first. So I'm Kevin Boyer. I'm a school social worker with Lancaster City Schools. That is in Southeast Ohio, just southeast of Columbus, there in the center. So I'm at Gorsuch West Elementary. We serve kindergarten through 5th grade, and then I'm the department chair as well too. So I kind of look at all the data and kind of organize all the schools for us and stuff too. So.
I'm Eva Ostrowski. I'm the Director of Counseling and Wellness at the Hun School of Princeton. We are an independent school located in Princeton, New Jersey, about an hour between New York and Philly. We have a middle school starting in 6th grade and an upper school starting in 9th grade. Our upper school population is 70% day students and 30% boarding students. We are an all-gender institution, and at the school, in addition to overseeing our counselors and our health educators, I also help out with our peer leadership program. I'm a dorm parent, so I live in one of the dormitories with our students, and I support our cultural competency training for faculty.
And hello, my name is Michelle Drew. I am coming from Marionopolis Preparatory School in Thompson, Connecticut. We are an independent school, an independent high school, actually with about, I would say 25% boarding population from 18 different countries and a 75% day population. We are a Catholic-based institution, and so we have some faith incorporated into our programming. And so thank you for coming.
Wonderful. All right, so now we're going to dive into some of the questions to learn more about how data is making a difference in the work that you all do. So to start, I was thinking we could start with the sort of the big picture. So data in counseling is still relatively new, and I'm sure it's changed a lot of the way you all approach your work. So I'd love to hear about how having access to data has changed the way you and your team support your students.
I'll start since I kept myself off mute. I think that the data that we've been able to compile through our clinical record has been really helpful in teaching faculty how prevalent mental health is and how prevalent student learning differences are in the classroom, especially those learning differences that are often hidden or internalized. And so I think having the data to be able to show the rest of the faculty these things that are hidden, it really provides a concrete foundation for how we can impact the student lives and what the students are going through, as opposed to not being able to see it.
For us, our data is, as Michelle said, certainly used to help update and share with faculty what we're seeing. We really try to look at the data from a systemic lens. And so we try to pull out themes, we try to pull out and look at it by demographics in terms of what grade levels are we spending a lot of time with right now. And in addition to what are the concerns that are popping up and what are the concerns that are popping up amongst the girls that are seeing us or amongst the non-binary students that are checking in, or how are our international students doing? And so we've found it can be really helpful in guiding us around some proactive planning.
And for me, what comes to mind is like it's actually helped grow my team. So I started with our district 13 years ago, I think it was. And when I first started, it was just myself and another school social worker for the entire district. So we split times, like we were building every day. Each of us had 5 buildings. So something kind of different. So by using the data and kind of showing the need and where the different needs are at in the buildings, it's helped us grow that we're up to like 11 school social workers now. So, I mean, it's really grown our team. Like that data has been presented to admin or a central office. It's been presented to like the Board of Education to help us like help them understand like where that need's at and help us kind of fill that need too. So it's been great.
That's
awesome.
really impressive that you guys have grown from like 1 to 11.
Yeah. And you feel like before it was nice because like obviously being at one building per day, like you feel like you're kind of just putting out fires, where now you actually feel like you can build those relationships with kids. You can put programming in place and stuff. So it's just been like a whole shift of like how my job even works. So
Yeah, so now, okay, so that reminds me, because we have used our data to inform our social emotional learning curriculum. Is that similar to what you guys have done as well? Because it really gives this like proactive approach compared to this reactive, like what you were just saying.
right. Yeah. It's all about putting like the things in place before it happens. So a little bit of prevention.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was just talking to a head of lower school yesterday who was telling me about how her school counselor looks at August and then sees which CASEL competencies her students are really strong in and which ones they're struggling a little bit more with. And then she uses that data to then decide how she wants to structure the curriculum for the spring. So I thought that was so cool. Just like when you have the data, you can be sort of more thoughtful about how you structure the programming.
We recently just had a larger student support meeting that included folks outside of the counseling department, where we talked about sleep as a huge issue as from what we're seeing with our kiddos. And it came from August data, and it came from data sources that we're using elsewhere in the school as well. But it was really helpful to kind of see in numbers what we were hearing a lot about in the hallways or teachers were commenting on, and we had the data to back it up.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Yeah, then you have the evidence to to bring to the table. Awesome.
Yeah, I think having data as well, like also helps teachers sort of have a starting point to like uncover if there's like learning differences in with their students and being able to see patterns that exist that we wouldn't have been able to identify without having such a concrete data format, or without the use of that clinical like that format. So that I think is super helpful, because then you're not only setting the kids up for the high school or their like school experience, but also their like secondary experiences in college to be able to get them the supports that they need.
Yeah, that like early identification.
Yeah, if you can call high school early, but yes.
Yeah. As soon as you can.
Yeah.
Right. And I like how you brought that up, that you share it with teachers, because it made me think like, I feel like our positions are often hard to like measure or like show like what you're actually doing. So this kind of fits like the numbers behind it, and I think it brings everyone's like awareness to it too. So like one of the best things I've ever best piece of advice that I've ever got was, I feel like I was in grad school social work was kind of newer. I feel like, and one of the professors said that you want to like make yourself known or make yourself so they can't get rid of you, which kind of sounds weird. but like the data kind of helps support that. Like, hey, I've seen like 100 students this month or whatever it might be. So
Totally. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people don't even realize all the students that go through your doors.
yeah.
I think we deal with that here as well. I think we constantly talk about demystifying the counseling process here, because I think some of our faculty and staff might feel like, I had this kid I was concerned about, I handed them off to you, and then it's a black hole. Like, I don't know what happened there. And so when we're able to say, you know, we're mid-trimester, we're mid-year, and here's the data of all the students, the demographics of the students we've seen, right? So that we can still maintain confidentiality, but our teachers do know, like, oh, wow, you are, this doesn't just go nowhere. I think that that's been really, really helpful for folks to kind of be clued in to things that are impacting them in the classroom too, because what we're talking about with students is certainly coming up, whether it's around a learning difference, Michelle, as you shared, or just like being perhaps a little amiss in the classroom one day. I think our faculty need to hear a little bit about what we're experiencing, and the data lets us do that in ways that is a little more concrete than anecdotes.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it helps with that progression of like treatment as well, like showing, I guess, the patterns of where students maybe had been in the beginning of the year to like the number of visits or the number of classes they missed, and then seeing that like they are making progress, but maybe it's, I think sometimes teachers, or maybe I'm speaking specifically for my school, think that like one meeting with a counselor is going to solve the problem. And I'm like, it really takes a lot longer than that. And so really helping them see that like progress is incremental, and that they are having steps in the right direction, and that also includes like we anticipate some steps backwards as well, you know, like it's not a linear progression. And also, and like talking globally.
That actually gets me really nicely into our next question. So a little bit more into the weeds of, so often data can sort of reveal patterns, sort of like you all mentioned, or red flags that weren't immediately apparent just from sort of stories and anecdotes. And so I'd love to hear a bit more about how data has helped you identify trends in, say, student behavior or mental health more generally that might have gone unnoticed otherwise. Anyone wants to chime in?
I'll jump in. We had talked, I shared a little bit about how sleep was something that came up. We also, a few years ago when we first started working with August, we compiled the data and saw that we were seeing a large number of girls as compared to boys. We are a school that is more heavily weighted boys right now. And so it did not match our demographics at all. It certainly met kind of cultural norms and societal norms that we see around gender, but we then created some really intentional programming that wasn't around like overt SEL skills. It was more around like, how do we show up to the basketball team's practice and get the coach to let us like drop in and say something about mental preparedness and toughness. And then that helped us get in front of some of our male students in a way that felt really accessible to them and not stigmatized. And then that opened the door for us to eventually get some more boys in here, because they realized we're humans as well. And our goal is not to, you know, diagnose them. But without the data, I don't know if we would have really been able to see how many boys we were missing. And it's definitely been a guide for us, whether it's, you know, again, our international students have had different needs throughout the years. Again, international boys specifically. And so that's an area where we have just created different programming that doesn't always revolve around counselors. We've been able to pull in other trusted adults at the school, taking this approach that well-being is basically the responsibility of everyone. And counseling might hold a lot of that data, but we can certainly work as a community to bolster our students' well-being.
I love that. That's awesome. Like finding the people who might not come to the counselor, but who need some support. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you said, Eva, about the international students, is because there are so many cultures that don't view mental health the same way that we in America do. And so really being able to target those, whether it's in the residence halls or whether it's in like the athletic fields, like a less structured environment, it can seem so much less threatening and really get more of that buy-in. So yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Mhm.
I feel like for us, it's maybe a little more about like specialized instruction of those SEL skills and stuff. So, like if we're seeing a trend in fourth grade regarding like anxiety or whatever it might be, so if kind of forming that in like our social skills groups or SEL groups around those needs that we're seeing that with the data. So instead of just kind of like shooting it in the dark, like thinking like, oh, we can try to cover a couple different skills. For a grade level or a group or whatever it might be, like we're actually specialized on things that they're actually struggling with and things that we're seeing. So I feel like it's really helped us out that way. I mean, our groups here, our small groups are actually formed around the data of like what certain skills and stuff that they need and what certain skills that we're seeing that are trending. So class presentations are kind of the same way, using the data to figure out like what grade levels or what class presentations and stuff that we need to be kind of focusing on a little more.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing stories like that. To me, that's one of the coolest things about data is that you can sort of get ahead of things. It allows you to like be really proactive and sort of intervene when an issue is just starting to emerge rather than, once it's snowballed into that sort of larger problem. So sort of understanding patterns is one side of the equation, and then tailoring individual support is a whole nother. So different data points can give us all those little unique insights into a student's needs. So I'd love to hear, what kind of data do you all find most useful in helping tailor support for individual students?
I think it's for like for all the schools, it's like those specialized things that are kind of popping up um, that all of our social workers kind of select or whatever whenever they meet with a student. So it's kind of like I was saying with the groups and stuff, it can also be towards student on like what you need to work on. Like I've seen this student so many times this month for this thing, for this certain thing. So making sure that that's getting addressed and making sure that those services are getting provided.
For us, we use the data a lot around how, when we're looking at individual students, the resources that we're using to support the student. So it's really helpful for us, at the end of a month to say, okay, we saw this student 15 times and they don't want us reaching out to anybody. It feels like we need to reach out to somebody, right? Like we need to get teachers involved, or we need to get the family involved. The flip side of that is, there might be a student at the end of the month that's like, wow, 15 teachers. We've had 15 conversations with teachers about this kiddo and they're not coming into the office. And the family isn't necessarily interested in working with us. So there's a real concern here and we have to go about this a different way. So for us, it lets us see, again, how we're utilizing our resources from a counseling perspective, but also where our faculty and staff are in terms of their support of the student, where the student is in terms of their involvement in the process, and where the family is also involved or not involved. It shows us really good patterns around that.
That's awesome. Yeah, just being able to know just how many students, how many times they visited is huge. Sorry, Michelle.
Sorry, I also think that like when we're looking at sort of the symptom management, so having data on like which symptoms are present when is also really helpful. So knowing when, like if it's a school avoidance issue, is it around a specific class? Is it around a teacher? Is it a peer related incident, right? So there's like knowing what symptoms are being presented in which environment is helpful. So using that data to tailor the way we're approaching a student has been really, I think, transformative for some of our faculty who are a little bit more old school and a little bit more like, you're missing class, you need to make this up right now, where we can say like, well, I think there's more to the story for this student. So let's talk about like maybe working with the student individually outside of that classroom setting, and getting them sort of more of one-on-one instruction to help ease them back into the classroom for whatever reason. So really being able to identify like which symptoms are present in what environment has been helpful in individual plans moving forward with students. And specific, like, because we're a residential or a boarding school, we are looking at like eating patterns and sleep patterns and all sorts of like executive functioning like outside of a classroom as well. So seeing like if they're not prepared for class, how can we use other adults in the community to support that preparation and that academic habit? So really taking this like global approach for this with the student in the center has been really helpful in seeing what symptoms are present where and how we can support the student in growing at a developmentally appropriate level. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah. And I think whenever kind of we take a step back from the individual, using that data to see like overall how our program is working, programming like through tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, whether it's like your prevention programming, your SEL programming. If I'm seeing so many students this month, is that not the right program that I have in place? Is it not being done with full fidelity? So kind of just kind of getting your mind around all of the tiers and programmings that you have as well too. I think it kind of helps out with that if you're seeing a lot of individuals for a certain thing.
I think what's so interesting with what you just shared around programs and effectiveness and for us, a question we're still wrestling with, and I'm curious to hear, is kind of like what numbers are we shooting for? And so it's certainly our administrative team has asked that question, like where should we be as a counseling department? And it's tough because we've found that as we have demystified the counseling office in certain areas of the school, we've increased numbers. But I don't know if that's because they are less well, or if because they're actually getting the support that we talk about as a school. And so it's been this really interesting balance for us around what in our data is showing us that we are reaching students and they are self-advocating and coming in and getting the support they need, and what data is showing us that our students are actually not doing so well right now and really struggling around a thing. So that's just been where the numbers have been interesting, and I don't have an answer to that question, but it really is something that's top of mind for us as we've gotten used to having the data. And I did see in the chat somebody asked about like when we talk about data from where I sit, we use August data entry for our counseling work, and then we have other data sources within the school. So our nurses use a separate program, and our Dean of Students office has a separate tracking system, and our teachers use a separate tracking system. So we are not cohesive in terms of that data, but we do have dedicated meeting time to compare all of the data that we're seeing so that we can see, from an academic and advisory standpoint, these are the kids of concern, and this is why. From a counseling standpoint, these are the kids of concern. I think it would be great if we were all on a platform like August together. We're not there yet. But again, our question really is like, where do we want our numbers to be? And, I'd be curious, Michelle or Kevin, if either of you have kind of talked about that with your departments and have an idea.
I think we're kind of in the same boat with that. So it's especially like in the academic world, they're looking, that's all they do is crunch numbers. As far as like testing and everything goes. So for the counseling and social work world, it's kind of a different thing. Like you want to show that like, obviously you're reaching a lot of students. But yeah, is that because you've built relationships with them, which is a great thing, and they keep coming back, or is it because there is like a bigger need? So, and I think that's where August does a great job of. So when you pull up your analytics and stuff, whenever we pull that tab up, it shows like how many students that you've actually encountered, and then how many actual encounters that you have. So you can tell a difference. It's just not a head count. So it's kind of cool to see the different things that they do a great job presenting that data to us.
I like how you're framing, Eva, that like are we seeing more students? What numbers should we be having, right? Like where's this like sweet spot? And I think the more data that we have at Marianopolis specifically, the more students we're seeing, right? So the more students we're seeing, the more data we have, the more symptom presentation we have. Also, are we doing enough? Like what else can we do to reduce the symptom management? And I don't know, like I don't know if I don't know what the right answer is. You know, I think like we're getting data from all over the place, right? So like attendance data, emails coming in from families that are saying like my kid is struggling, pull them in. But then where's the next step? Like where's that aftercare, I guess, in this, and how much can the counseling program really hold the weight of?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it takes a village, you know. It's like so many people being part of that like network of support, and that actually sort of gets me into my next question, which I saw somebody also asked in the chat, sort of about, you know, working with data in a school means a lot of collaboration. So counselors, teachers, administrators, learning specialists, social workers, everybody's in this network of support. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you share data with other members of the student support team, and how do you use data to collaborate with them?
So we'll share data. So I'll share data from the counseling from our visits and our platform, like in a global sense, and break it down as to like what some of the gendered issues that we're seeing mostly, what are some of the international versus the domestic issues. What in those faculty meetings, it's really like what are some of the trends that we're looking at, and how can we be more proactive around like offering tailored support. So we know like February is the longest month in a boarding school, and so really what can we do in January to get the students to be in a better mental health or mentality than previous years, so that February is better, right? So like really I'm sharing like global data with the faculty at some of those faculty meetings, but breaking it down into demographics.
Yeah, to give them a better sense of like pulse on a school.
Right. And as Eva, and I think even Kevin has mentioned, like looking at what grades are doing what, like we know that freshmen around homecoming time are a little bit like, who am I going to go with? What's this? What dress am I going to wear? And it's very like social based stress and anxiety. And so having freshman programming beforehand around peer relationships and empathy awareness and like more relationship skills, versus those seniors are doing a lot more college stress and what are their last SATs that they're going to take, and how their essays are coming, their applications. So really thinking the programming for the freshmen looks a lot different than the programming for the seniors, and how we can tailor to their specific needs, I guess.
That's awesome.
I shared before, we do have a lot of different tracking systems. We have one universal spreadsheet right now where we kind of department leaders have access to the students that are really high on their concern list. There's no specific information around diagnosis or any reason in particular. It's just like this person needs to be on everybody's radar. And then, as I said, we meet once a month with a larger student support team to really go through like, these have been our discipline incidents by gender and grade, and we try to see if there are any how do they align, right? So are there any kiddos on that list that have been in the counseling office a lot, or these are our students who are really struggling academically right now? Okay, well, they have this other thing going on, and so we need to make sure we're supporting them with not only academic support but social emotional support as well. It's been a really great way to collaborate. We have weekly smaller meetings with different departments to review individual cases. And then that larger once a month meeting is really around trends and data.
Yeah, I think we fall in the same boat as far as like team meetings, and it's nice to show like because I honestly I don't always do the best job of like communicating with teachers maybe of like what services are provided for students or whatever it might be. So this always kind of helps me go back and look at those services. Helps us during our team meetings to make sure that those services are and get in place. But overall, I think it's talking a little bit about how we share that data too. So like at the end of each month, it's sent to like our administration office and like our central office is what we call it, and then also like our board of education too, kind of just to see where all so we can kind of see trends and see where those numbers are at as well. But yeah, I think it really kind of helps us with during the team meetings and stuff. Just like I said, just make sure that everything's getting kind of covered, and so.
That's awesome.
And we it's nice with August schools because you can provide different access to certain individuals. So like within a school or within our team, like we have our counselors, social workers, but then you can also provide limited access to like your admin team. So your vice principals, special education directors, psychologists, so that they can see not necessarily what notes are being put in, but can see like also Mr. Boyer's talked, or and I know Mr. Boyer's talked or met with this student, or the student's getting this service. So not necessarily breaking confidentiality of what's being said or what's being covered, but just know that something is being covered. So.
Yeah, and for those who aren't familiar, in August, we have very, very strict user permissions and what we call sort of secure transparency, so that you can keep, really important student information confidential and secure while still being able to collaborate and share what needs to be shared with other members of the student support team. Awesome. And then I saw, so, we're already over, but I saw a question in the chat about where are you getting your data? So anyone wants to answer?
So like I was saying, either at least once a month or a couple times a month, I'm just hitting the analytics tab for August schools and just pulling that up. So it shows you, like I said, how many encounters, depending on what filters and stuff you put in as well, but how many encounters are, how many encountered students, so how many students you've actually met with, what are some of the issues, whether it be like home, social, emotional, academic, some of the others, and kind of what the reasoning behind that was, whether it may be feelings or like behavior disturbance. It's kind of some of the things that are in there as well. And then kind of what was the result. Like I called a parent, I sent the student back to class, I notified an adult to come get the student or whatever it might be, seek emergency services. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so our three panelists use August schools to document their encounters with students, family, teachers, and anything like that. And so once you put that data into August, then you get all these cool analytics and insights out the other end. So that's what they've been mentioning here. Yeah, and I know we went super over, so apologies. I know you all have busy days. So just huge thank you to all three of you for sharing your perspectives. And, data is always evolving. And so getting to learn from each other has been amazing. So thank you for sharing. And thank you everyone for joining us. We hope this conversation has, sparked some new ideas on how data can empower your own work. So I hope you all have a great day. And feel free to follow up with any questions. My email's in the Zoom invite. So let me know if you have any questions. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You all.
Thank you.